Hey, Zach.
Hello. How are you? Should I use Adobe today or Blue Jeans since someone might be presenting?
Yeah, so... Ooh, echo. I'm going to have a few slides that I'm going to use in Adobe Connect, and then I'll use screen sharing to show Jacob's slides. So, actually, I'm going to start screen sharing right now. There we go. Okay. Yeah, that should do. I forgot to check to make sure everyone got their papers in. Oh, whoops. There we go. I'll worry about that later. How many more classes do you have in Severn?
Ecuador. You have to take a cup of water and drink it upside down.
Yeah, that actually works.
It's the only thing that works. Holding your breath.
Never mind.
No, it's better with a cup.
I mean, they're both.
Yeah. And you want to put it in the answer. You have to stand up, and you have to drink it like you have to bend.
My exams start on Friday.
How long do they run?
Next Thursday.
Okay. What's up, Jacob?
Hello. So, are you going to be able to share my presentation? There we go. And yeah, it's blocked out. Okay.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
How was that? What happens if you miss more than 5 classes?
You fail.
Really?
No.
The whole year?
No. I was joking. It, strictly speaking, MSON has the right to remove you from the class, but that it's unlikely that would really happen.
Okay. Unless I do something really bad.
Right.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Why does he have 2 microphones? Why are you double logged in? How does that work?
So if I want to get the PowerPoint, I have to log in on my computer because it just doesn't do it on the screen. And normally I can log in fine, and I just set my computer to not send any information so it doesn't do that double thing. I'll just try to stop that from happening.
Wow.
So, weird. So Zach, does that mean that right now you can't see what I'm doing as a screen share?
Nope.
Wow, that's
kind of major.
That's too bad. Has it always been like that?
No. Can you just for the next 30 seconds turn off your microphones, and then I'll tell you when they can go back on? Okay. It should be good now.
Okay, cool. Well, now that Alexandra has joined us,
Yeah.
good to see you. Glad you're able to.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm kind of sick, but I thought I would like go log in.
No, good. I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
It's one of the benefits of an online class. Although maybe you should mute your microphone.
Oh, what happened?
Oh, just
Oh,
mute your
'cause I'm
microphone so that
coughing.
yeah.
Oh,
There you go. Ooh, did that? Yeah, you got it. Good. Cool. Okay. Well, let's see. Class has started, so why don't we get going here? Let me start off with a few announcements. These are announcements I would have done last time if my computer wasn't being such a pain. So I'll do them this time. Well, one of them is a new announcement, and that's of the last reading analysis and discussion question assignment for the semester, and that is on Susan Schneider's paper titled Mind Scan: Transcending and Enhancing the Human Brain, and that is available on eCollege. So I've got a couple of questions for you to answer, and then you'll give me some questions for discussion by midnight on tomorrow night, December 9th. Of course, Sam, since you are going to be presenting on that paper, you don't need to do the reading analysis and discussion questions assignment. Yeah, so what I want you to do in this paper, I think it's a pretty interesting paper. It's not quite as fun as Dennett's, but it's kind of along that same line. In this paper, Susan, or Professor Schneider, discusses a view called transhumanism. And her main interest is in identifying the conception of the self, or the conception of personhood and personal identity over time that transhumanists are committed to. They have a certain view about what the self must be. And so I want you to focus on what that view is and what Schneider's objection to that view is. But more on that at the very end. Just to remind you again, there's no official third writing assignment this semester. I decided to drop that. We just didn't have time for it. So this is optional. But yeah, I thought I'd let you have a shot at rewriting one of your essays if you wanted to maybe try to improve your grade on it. I'll make the official post of this assignment on Wednesday on eCollege, and I'm going to make this due anytime before the end of 2014. That way, yeah, because grades aren't actually due until January 5th, so I could, yeah. Anyway, yeah, Jacob.
Will this be revising an essay, or is it just totally from starting over from scratch, rewriting a new essay?
No, I think of it more as revising.
Okay.
So, I made some comments on your papers. You could respond to the comments that I've made or try to improve it, take those comments into account. Yeah. Yeah, Zach?
By when can we expect the second writing assignment grades to be up so that we can think about revising those?
Yeah, I think that I should have those done in a week. So by next Monday, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So a little more about this final exam. This is an unproctored exam, so you guys don't have to worry about finding a proctor. There's going to be 3 parts to the final. Well, let me talk about some more of like when you. So you're going to take this final at some point during finals week, which is next week for MSON. So sometime between December 15th and December 19th. And what's going to happen is on the 15th, kind of later in the day, I'll make it available on eCollege. And whenever you are ready, don't download it until you are ready to take it. But whenever you are, download it from eCollege. It'll be in a Word document format, so you can enter your answers right into the document if you like. Make sure you save frequently, and you got 3 hours to complete it. And when you're done, you upload it to the Dropbox in eCollege, and you should email it to me as an attachment. Jacob has been doing this with his papers because he's been having trouble with eCollege. Sometimes eCollege just doesn't work very well, the Dropbox. And so email it to me with a carbon copy to yourself so you know that it went through. I use there's a little timestamp when you download the exam, and I can compare that to when you send it to me and make sure you finished within 3 hours. If it's 5-10 minutes late, no big deal. But if it gets beyond a half hour, what I'll start doing, I'll just deduct 5 points out of 100 for every half hour late it is, or something like that. I should probably put a limit on that. But I think 5 points per half hour is severe enough that you won't want to take too much longer to finish the exam. Okay. Now, Monday's class, a week from today, is an optional review session. So if you wanna meet and talk about the material from the semester and maybe get a little bit of a sense of what topics are going to be on the exam, we can do that. I'll be happy to do that. I'll be here, and show up if you like. The exam itself is going to have 3 parts. Part 1 is going to be some definitions. Just tell me the definition of some term. Maybe very short explanations could go there. The second section is going to be short essays. So these are like 1 paragraph long. Typical questions are, characterize a thesis or a position that some philosopher has held. And then in the long essay, there'll be one that you have to write. And that's a place where you're not just going to explain a position or a theory. You're going to defend a view about some philosophical problem. It's going to be something about philosophy of religion and or the problem of free will. I will give you the potential final essay questions ahead of time. Okay. So that you can think about what it is that you really want to say. You can start to craft your response into pretty good shape. Okay. Yeah. Any questions about this? Almost everyone's hand is up. So Alexander, let's start with you.
So whenever you said for us to take a position on an argument, do you want us to have to create our entirely own position as if we were creating an entirely new theory, or just combine different positions and just say that's what we would agree with?
Right. Good question. No, you do not have to come up with a completely novel theory from scratch on your own.
Okay.
That would be far too much to ask. That's too much to ask of most graduate students in philosophy.
Okay. Got it.
No. You can synthesize. You can use positions, defend a position that we've studied on a topic. But the point is that you're going to be defending a view and not merely explaining some other philosopher's view. Okay. The way I ask the question, it'll be clear what exactly you're supposed to do. Sam.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering if at any time we were gonna just review suggestions on how to defend views rather than just explaining, because I know we've done a lot of summaries and explaining, but I don't know so much about the actual synthesis of combining them and then proving a point. Or
Well, I mean, I think you've done this to a certain extent in class discussions, where there's one thing to say what your position is. It's another thing to say why you think that position is right. And I think each of you in discussion have been willing to say some things about why you think a position is right.
okay. I just think the discussion. Got it.
Yeah, I mean, we could do this a little bit in the review session if you want to. Although also your paper, your on free will, you would have done some of this. So, um, okay. Yeah, Jacob.
Well, we have to know specific philosophers and their specific positions off the top of our heads. We need to memorize which ones supported which thought.
Um, I tend not to ask you questions like match the theory with the philosopher. I don't really care that much, but if I ask you what, um, you know, if I asked you about Dennett's position on free will, you should be able to say something about that.
Okay.
So, look, one thing to remember is that the exam is open notes, open book, and so forth. So if you do need to go look something up to remind yourself, that's fine. But you should also do some reviewing of the material from the semester, because you don't want to have to look up everything in that 3-hour window. That'll lead to trouble. That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Sam, go ahead.
Well, one of my answers was or questions was answered. But so how who's gonna proctor our class? Like, where should we take this?
Yeah, you can take this at home.
Okay.
You know, had I thought about this more ahead of time, I might have made this proctored, but it's too late to set all that up now. So you can take this at home wherever you have 3 hours of quiet time when you can focus and just work.
Okay.
But it's up to you. If you like to do work late at night, you can take this from 11 p.m. till 2 a.m. or whatever you want.
Do you just want us to email you when we start, and then?
Oh, no, you don't have to email me. So when you're ready to take the exam, go to eCollege and you download it. I'll have it in doc sharing. Okay. I get there's a timestamp. I can tell when you download it.
Okay.
So, and I also, and it's the same with uploading to the Dropbox. There'll be a Dropbox for the final exam.
All right, cool.
Yeah. But I do recommend that when you're finished with the exam, I do recommend that you both upload it to eCollege in the Dropbox and send it to me as an email attachment, because, just to make sure I get it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? All right. Then let's proceed to our topic for today. And so this week is a little bit of I suppose I think of it just as a kind of a little bit of an easier week as we end the semester. Talk about some things that I think are kind of fun to think about. But this is also a transition into the material that we're going to be doing next semester. The topic that we're going to start with next semester is the mind-body problem, and we'll be doing philosophy of mind. And one of the questions that has long been central to the philosophy of mind, and really to metaphysics more generally, the study of what there is and what the nature of what there is, has been the nature of the self. I mean, philosophy in general is interested in the world, what the world is like, what we are like, and how we fit in with the rest of the world. Those are sort of the three general questions that most philosophy has something to do with. And so, one of those questions concerns our own nature. One of the aims of philosophy is to understand ourselves. And so this question about what is the self, or what is it to be a person or a human being? These are words that get used: self, person, human. These are words that sometimes get used kind of interchangeably. Another concept that's sort of in this general area is the concept of a subjective experience, the thing that thinks and it feels and experiences the world. What sort of thing is this? What is its general nature? That's the question. I have these two questions here. Where's my cursor? There we go. Major questions that fall under the general category of thinking about the nature of the self. So the ones I've just been saying, what is the self? What is a person? The other one is the problem of personal identity. And that's the attempt to say, what is it that makes you the same person that you were, when you were 5 years old, or even just 1 year ago, right? In many ways, you're different. A year ago, you hadn't had a course on in critical reading and argumentation. You maybe hadn't thought about some of the topics that we've covered. And so you have different things to think about, different beliefs about certain things now. You might have different things that you care about now than you did a year ago. Certainly you do than when you were 5 years old. Your body is different. You've been to different places. So there are a lot of ways in which you're different than that 5-year-old person. And yet, when you're maybe getting to know a new friend a little bit, you might be looking through some pictures or I don't know, maybe now you'd share a picture on Facebook or something or Tumblr, and you'd say, this is a picture of me when I was 5 years old. Well, the thing in the picture is a lot different than you are now. So what makes it true that that's you as opposed to, some other person that's very closely related to you? Saying what it is that makes someone the same person over time and through change is the problem of personal identity. And so the things that we're reading this week are kind of, I think, somewhat entertaining attempts to start thinking about these questions. And we'll be thinking about them more next semester. So, yeah. What was that? Oh, right. I was just going to mention that this problem of personal identity is just an instance of a more general problem, and this really is a problem in metaphysics, of understanding how things retain their identity, that is, remain the same thing over time, even though there's change. So you guys maybe have heard the saying, you can never step in the same river twice. An ancient Greek philosopher thought that rivers are never the same from one moment to the next because their constituent waters or constituent water molecules, as we might say, are always changing. Well, so if that's true, how can you ever go to the same river twice? Or maybe you don't think you can. But there are all kinds of objects that change over time, but we still say it's one and the same object. How can that be? The problem of personal identity is just one instance of that. So I won't try to sketch out all the different theories about persons or personal identity now. We're going to be getting a little bit of that by thinking about Dennett's paper and by thinking about the paper for next time. Because definitely one way to understand what Dennett's up to in this paper is he's playing around with these different theories about what you are by having you think about different possibilities of where you are. Okay, so with that, I think I'll turn things over to Jacob, who's going to help us out with
or at least try
Dan Dennett's Where Am I? Okay, take it away, Jacob.
So if you want to read the little cartoon there, it's a little funny. If you want, move on to the next slide. Okay, so throughout Dennett's paper, he describes what I perceive to be all these different situations of how the body, the brain, and the mind can interact, and what are the different possibilities. So Dennett starts off as a regular human being. The mind, body, and brain are all, as we would think of, in one place. This is a state that we typically believe we are, even though this can get more complicated after you read about the other situations and come back to this one, you can start having questions. But this is the typical human being. Can you move on to next? Okay, so then this is where it starts to get interesting. When you have one body and you have one brain that are separated. He names his brain York and his body Hamlet. And this is when he begins the question, where am I? Is he in the vat with the brain, or is he in the body looking at the brain? And then he describes 3 different possibilities. Can you move on to the next slide? Okay, so he comes up with 3 possibilities. That Daniel Dennett is in his body. But he says that this really isn't possible, or at least it's easily refutable, because he gives the example of Tom and Dick. And if Tom and Dick switch bodies, if you put Tom's brain in Dick's body and Dick's brain in Tom's body, the thing with Dick's body and Tom's brain will still continue to say it's Tom, because no matter what your physical aspects are, your brain will still continue to say, I'm the original person. So then Daniel Dennett gives another example that he is in his brain. But now he starts to come up with a strange situation of the body robbing a bank in California, but the brain remaining in Texas. Who is doing the robbing? Is it the body that's physically carrying it out, or the brain that's masterminding the whole thing back in Texas? Where would he be prosecuted? If Dennett is all in his brain, then he can't be prosecuted for his body going and robbing a bank in California. And so that's where the situation starts to get murky. Who's doing the robbing? So then Daniel comes up with a third possibility, that Daniel Dennett is wherever he thinks he is. Any person has a point of view, and this point of view is from the location of the person, and Dennett somewhat seems to agree with this. Even so, even if this seems like the more plausible of the 3, he gives examples of weird things that happen when you when you start to go with it. For example, a person in a movie theater, or what do you call it, in a cinema, watching footage of a roller coaster, even though that they know that they're safely inside the movie theater, they still get the effect as if they're on the roller coaster. So their mind is out with the roller coaster, and they're having that point of view, even though their body is safely contained in the movie theater. Okay, Dr. Walhagen?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, have any of you guys ever ridden I forget what it's called, but it's something like Flight over California at Disneyland or anything like that?
What is maybe? Which one's Disneyland? I don't remember.
That's the one in California.
Oh, no.
Disney World's in Florida. Have you been to that?
Yeah, I've been to Disney World.
Was there a what do you remember? Did you ever ride the Star Tours ride? The Star Wars thing?
They didn't have that. I swear they didn't have that when I was there.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. Space Mountain's fun, though. I like Space Mountain.
Yeah, Space Mountain's great. Because you might not find this very compelling, this thing about sitting in a movie theater watching a film of a roller coaster, but there are some pretty advanced versions of these where the screen is huge, and it's curved around you, up high and to the sides and a little bit below you, so that it really fills your vision, fills your visual field. And you sit in a seat that actually comes up off the ground a little bit. It's a little bit like a roller coaster. you know those rides that it's a roller coaster, but your feet are free. Yeah, and you really have the sense of flying around and flying over the scenery, and you know, if you're like me and you're a little afraid of heights, there are moments that are definitely uncomfortable. And so there are versions of these that really do give you a pretty powerful feeling of being in a different location. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah. So and that goes to support the view that your mind is wherever you see it to be, sort of. I know I didn't phrase that well.
Daniel Dennett always gives a lot of he gives like the mind a lot of trust. Sorry.
Yeah, but if your mind sees that it's or feels that it's on a roller coaster, then that is where it is at that moment. I think that's what he's trying to say here. Another example that they talks about is if your brain, or if you get arrested and your brain is put into jail, but then your body is allowed to roam free, and your body goes to listen to Daniel Dennett, you'll have the feeling that you're going listening to Daniel Dennett, not that your brain's stuck back in the jail. So these are three possibilities that of where your mind can be, and yeah. Can you go on to the next one? So now he has the third situation, one brain all alone. So now Daniel Dennett is just a brain because his body was trapped below Tulsa, Oklahoma, trying to do the thing with the missile, and kind of a weird story. But because the brain is separated and it doesn't die with the body, it continues living. And also, now, without the body to sense things, Dennett can only think. He can't feel, he can't see, he can't hear. He said, like, one of the few things he can do is, like, is like go through his mind and try to think like about where he is. So in this example, his mind is back in his brain because that's the only place that can be at the moment. So like from his point of view, he is his brain. Can you go on to the next one? Okay, so the fourth situation is that he has a new body but the same brain. This kind of goes back to the example of Tom and Dick when you put a new brain or the old brain in a new body, you're still going to feel like how the brain felt before. Daniel Dennett still describes himself as Daniel Dennett, even though he has a totally new body and his face and his facial features don't really resemble how he used to be. He still calls himself Daniel Dennett. His mind was able to go from his body to his brain and now to a new body. So, yeah. This kind of supports his rebuttal of the first possibility that states that he is with his body, because if he can go to another body, then he's not solely confined to his original body. Can you go on to the next slide? Okay. So now the fifth situation is that he has two brains in one body. So after getting the new body, then it also gets another brain. Then it can switch from one brain to the other, but only one brain can express itself at one time. The other one's still alive and thinking, but they have different experiences because only one can be expressing. It doesn't stop thinking. And then at the end of the story, we learn that the other brain, what do you call it? Fortin something? Yeah.
Yeah, he calls it Fortinbras. Yeah, you guys know these are all names from Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Now, I also I just want to interject something. You have to imagine. See, Dennett is first presented this paper to an actual audience. This is a paper he presented as a lecture, invited lecture, and so some of the things that he says are in the paper are jokes about, like when he talks about getting the new body and it's not quite the body he used to have. This is supposed to be a joke because he's standing in front of this audience, and according to the story, the body that they are seeing as he's talking is this new body that he was given, not the old one. And so, yeah. And then the thing that happens at the end, he actually acts this out in front of the people that he's giving the talk to, and so it probably would have been pretty funny to watch.
That makes more sense now that in the context.
Right.
Yeah, and the whole thing what you're talking about at the end of the story, it shows that because the two brains had different experiences, they grew up very differently and they act very differently. So when one's turned off and the other one gets turned on and can express itself, it's upset at the other one. And the thing that I was thinking about was like kind of like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde sort of situation, where you have like the one evil brain, the one nice brain. But the thing that's Zach, do you have a question? Someone have a question?
Yeah, I think Zach might. But I also want to say, I think we should talk a little bit more about what this other brain is and how exactly it's in touch with the body and stuff like that. Because it's not just an ordinary brain, right? So
yeah,
if someone wants to talk about that.
It's basically, it's been programmed, and so all of the things that have been sent from the body to the original brain is now sent also to Fortinbras. And and then the researchers in Texas programmed it so it would act just like his brain, his original brain, and they were like mirror images of each other. But from the point where he got a new body, then he would start getting the new information when it was being expressed. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, and what else about the this other? You've been calling it a brain, but what is it really in the story?
More like a computer program.
Yeah. It's a computer that's been programmed with his psychological profile. So it's a computer that's running, as it were, a simulation of his brain. And at first, just like you said, all the information from the body, the new body that he has, gets sent both to his brain and to the computer, right? And since they've been, as it were, I like your way of describing it as a mirror image of his brain. Because of that, the computer will respond to the inputs in the exact same way his brain would, right? So imagine that determinism is true here. That might help you.
Yeah.
Right. So that there's that fun scene where he's given the switch that switches control between his brain and the computer. And there's another joke here that you guys wouldn't necessarily get. He calls the computer brain Hubert, right? The reason he calls it Hubert is that there's a philosopher named Hubert Dreyfus who famously argued that you could never program a computer that would be intelligent. And so this is Dennett taking a shot at Hubert Dreyfus by calling his obviously intelligent computer brain Hubert. So Dreyfus was probably in the audience at this talk or something like that. But anyway, but because they're mirror images of one another, when they receive the same input, they produce the same output. So both the brain and the computer are receiving the same inputs and sending out the same outputs. So that when Dennett flips, or whoever, flips that switch between control by the brain and control by Hubert, the computer, he can't tell a difference, because regardless of which one he does, the brain and the computer are both sending the same output. So you have the same behavior resulting whichever one is in control. And so it's only when he leaves the switch on one, right? And he also has that bit where he scratches out on the control switch which one is controlling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that he doesn't know. And it's only when it's left on one side for a long time that maybe, either quantum effects or just very slight differences in the brain and the computer start to lead them to diverge, so that then you've got one kind of still receiving inputs from the body, but no longer feeling like it's in control of the body. So that would be very unsettling. Have any of you seen the movie, oh geez, Being John Malkovich?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a great play on this idea in that movie. Anyway.
Yeah, there was one thing I was thinking, like I was like trying to think, what is Dennett trying to say with this? And I kind of came to the conclusion that he's trying to say that the brain itself isn't a mind. Okay, wait, let me just backtrack. When he was talking about the possibility of Dennett being in the brain, I think he's trying to almost disprove that here, because he's showing that the brain, if it's just like a computer system, it's just a physical object. It's not in itself like a mind. So, is this a correct interpretation?
Oh, well, I want to hold off on that. I think this is something we should all kind of chime in on about what exactly Dennett's up to in this paper. But so, do you want to continue with your slides?
I'll continue. Yeah, I'm jumping the gun here.
Because you're almost to the end here.
Yeah.
Next slide. You want me to go to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sixth situation. I don't know why didn't put it in the title. Dennett could have two brains and two bodies, but he doesn't in the story. He doesn't have two bodies. It's just a theoretical. He could. One could stay home, and the other one could travel the world. Dennett could do both things. He could talk about, like, he could cheat on his wife, but still be loyal to her, sort of. So he could do all the things he wanted to with still being good, I guess. And while this doesn't actually happen in the story, it does pose an interesting question, like, where would he be? Which is the real Daniel Dennett? And the thing that I thought was, like, how, if he can only switch between one, how could he do that if he's still only one mind to switch? How wouldn't have to, like, just sit there and wait to be turned on? I don't know. I guess you can move on.
Yeah, I'll just say in the two bodies case, either Hubert is given control of one body and Dennett's brain is given control of the other body, and they just leave it like that. There's no switching control.
I thought they had to switch. Okay.
No, that's the way that's supposed to work. Yeah, only a man would have written that part of the paper that way. By the way.
Yeah.
But it's it's a good question. Which one would be Dennett? Just real quick, do you guys have opinions about that? Which would be the real Dennett? Yeah, Zach.
I don't think either one would necessarily be more real a Dennett than the other if you consider the fact that they both have identical personalities and belief systems. They're both filled with what makes Dennett Dennett. It's more of an opinion as to whether or not you think a computer can be a real person, and personally, I think if it's sufficiently advanced enough, it can be.
What? Okay. So, if the brain experiences, what if that Dennett then created two identical minds? One traveled the world, one didn't travel the world. However, they didn't share the same experience. Wouldn't you consider that two different people?
I think then it would be two different people, but you can't say one is any more identity than the other because they both had the experiences up to when they diverged, but they were still Dennett before they diverged, and thus they would still be Dennett after, just slightly different versions of Dennett.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
Yeah, like I like immaterial, like I just feel like almost like I think that it's one of those things where Dennett is like sort of changing the subject almost in a way that like I think that when people talk about the self, I think they talk about like an immaterial sort of like a metaphysical being, where this is talking about like a physical entity that thinks it's like something that it may not be. That's all I have to say.
When he's talking about, yeah, and the thing about this, when he was talking about like having two people, but you only really have one self. If you have two things that are both you, where does your self go? Like, how does, I don't, or is there even a self that still remains? Or,
yeah,
how do you make that transition?
It almost like, oh, sorry, Zach wants to say something.
Or the way I understood that its first line of questioning, which involved where was he in the brain or was he in the body? It was that if you separate yourself into different parts, then which part is actually you? Is the brain actually you, or is the body actually you? And in that case, I don't think he really defined his terms that well, because in some cases it sounded like he was asking that question, and in other cases it seemed like he was asking a purely physical location question, where is the seat of your mind? So with the homework question, which asked what you would consider to be the most plausible definition of where you are, I just put both because I think that both the body and the brain would incorporate all aspects of self together that you might be including in that question.
I think that the mind definitely exists. I think the thing that's unique to human experience, or just sort of like this, the reason that our consciousness is created is the separation between our perception and what is actually real. Like, without, if we experience everything on it's the real level, I think that you wouldn't have perception. It would only be, everything would just be almost like truth. There would be no perception just because everything would be what it is. But through the limitations that our bodies have creates a distance between what is real and our perception. Does that make sense? Or you know what I'm saying? That's the only way that consciousness could be created is through removing ourselves from real, what is actually real.
I agree with you that we are personally removed from our perceptions and from our perceptions as us, but I disagree with that you necessarily have to have a separation from reality via perceiving things as you do, which isn't necessarily correctly, in order to have a consciousness. For instance, let's suppose for a minute that we all evolved, the human race evolved over billions of years to become energy beings, which were kind of just a part of reality, where we were kind of intangible spirits that perceived everything. We could still, I'm really getting into the realm of science fiction here, but I guess we could still be, we could have consciousnesses and we could exist as people, even if we're kind of a part of reality itself.
I'd say that's a pretty severe hypothetical situation. There can't be consciousness or perception, I think, without a separation between like the real like and this perceiving entity. Because if you break down that, like, so think about it, like, if you it's like a space. It's like a third, like, or it's like this third space where, so there's a space in our mind that perceives, and there's a space that is real. But in between that, that's where our body comes in, and that's through what we perceive everything. But if you take that away, it would just be, if you just merged those two things together, and you wouldn't be able to see anything at all. Does that make sense? So like one space over here, one space over here. If you take away the space in between, you become part of it.
You're assuming that you need to be able to perceive the outside world. You need input in order to develop a consciousness.
Kind of. Like I don't know. I don't know. Please, can you refine what you're saying?
So you're basically saying your problem is that if you didn't have a body, you wouldn't be able to see, hear, taste, feel, experience the universe. And if you're saying that if you couldn't do that, then you wouldn't be a conscious being. It would just be, you wouldn't exist. And I think that and I'm going to refer to the senses as input, like computer input. I think that helps to create a consciousness. But I think, imagine we locked a baby in a room. It was a dark room that it was completely deprived of all senses. That would be horribly inhumane. But pretending that we do, I think it would be terribly brain damaged. It would never develop the ability to speak. But it might still develop a rudimentary consciousness, even if it wasn't a sophisticated one. And if we pretended this baby didn't like break down over time and eventually die of starvation, or its brain didn't turn to mush or something, it might eventually be able to develop a fairly sophisticated consciousness. It would just kind of have its own rules of working. It would invent its own language and systems of processing, which
but that's not what I'm saying. You're talking about like the world. Like I'm talking about like very literally, like without a body, without like so our mind is in our brain, or like our perception is in a way dislocated from what we perceive to be real isn't actually real. Like it's not real in the sense that there's more, and it's just there's more dimensions than we perceive, and that our inability to perceive all dimensions, and if we understood everything, we would almost know nothing, in a way that like it would just be completely, it would be like complete enlightenment. And then
Okay.
Once you're completely enlightened, sorry.
Yeah, I want to jump in just because I want to let Alexandra jump in as well here. But I am interested in what the connection is between there being a mind, or there being consciousness, and this point that you're making about, or this claim that you're making about, whether the content of consciousness accurately reflects reality, right? Whether what we perceive, what we directly perceive, as it were, captures or matches reality. I'm not quite sure I'm getting why the necessity, let's even suppose there's a kind of necessity to the incompleteness of our knowledge, or the claim that we don't perceive things exactly as they are. Let's grant that. Why is that? How is that connected with the existence of consciousness? That's I guess where I'm not quite following you there. But before you respond, I want to let Alexandra jump in here. Oh, you need to turn your mic on, Alexandra.
I just want to make a comment to Zach's example about the baby and how the baby would like develop a very like rudimentary form of conscience. I just was just making like another point of view to that argument that I'm not really sure that would necessarily be the case because like at least from what I've learned from like like psychology and like the process of learning, people learn from being exposed to other like people, and so for example they didn't necessarily do the experiment where they locked babies into a dark room and then like deprived them from all senses. But there have been cases where children had been, or like I know of one case where this one girl was like locked and well she wasn't locked but she was like never her parents were really bad and they like put her they like kind of like chained her to like her her bed and they like never like talked to her and they like didn't let her like walk and stuff like that and so like she basically didn't really get exposed to language or to other things like that and so when she came out she like didn't really know how to she couldn't like she didn't make her own language as you might assume because she was pretty much deprived from all these social interactions and so she like never really learned how to speak and she had other like issues as well. So I would just argue that like being that you wouldn't necessarily develop a conscience because like to know whether something is good or bad you would have to be in some sort of environment that would teach you whether something is like good or bad or and to develop that conscience.
I would respond that, hold on. I would respond that I heard of the case study you're talking about, and I agree. She wouldn't develop any language, and she might not develop a moral code. And my idea isn't that she would learn anything, because I agree that you need stimulation from the outside world to learn something. But my idea is that she would develop some sort of rudimentary system of thought that we might not recognize and that we might not make sense to us, but that it would still be thought nonetheless because she still has the equipment to think because she has a brain. But we can just let Sam answer Dr. Walgen's question about his theory, and then we can get back to this.
Yeah, but before we do that, I do have to say one thing though, Alexandra. You shifted to the notion of a conscience. And it may be true that the child wouldn't develop a conscience, that is a sense of right and wrong, but that's a different question than consciousness. Conscience is one thing. We're talking consciousness. And look, it's pretty clear that child, when she emerged, she was horribly mentally disfigured in a way, but she had a mind. I mean, there was someone that we say, look, she doesn't know this or that. She's there in some sense, even though, and so she did have a consciousness. She was aware of the world. It's just that she was stunted in her mental development. And but another comment that I want to make here is that when we do philosophy, it's good to draw upon actual case studies, but in order to really answer philosophical questions, you often have to be willing to entertain these hypothetical scenarios that in some sense don't match what would actually happen. Because we're asking about what's possible, not just what would happen, but what is possible. And Dennett actually gives us a tool for thinking about this kind of case of complete sensory deprivation, right? It's what happens when his body is originally destroyed and suddenly he's just a brain in a vat thinking about things. He has no sensations anymore, no sense of up or down or sound or feeling or anything. He's just thinking. So anyway.
But sensory deprivation I requires that there was at some point sensory input. So because whenever you are in a sensory deprivation tank, like you all the things that you think you feel and hallucinate are based off of prior stimulation.
Really?
Yeah, you know sensory deprivation. Yeah, like.
Or I have a response to that. Let's pretend that you get an egg and some sperm from man, and you combine it, and you have a human embryo, and you let that divide, and you turn the stem cells, and you set them through some scientific process we don't understand to be only nerve cells. And you let a brain itself develop without any of the nervous tissue or normal body that would develop in a person, and you put this brain in a vat. So you have a brain that from birth has no access to outside stimulation, and it is just a brain, and it has always been just a brain. So it's always just been this thinking organism. Would it develop a consciousness?
Well, would it be a thinking? Would it even become a thinking thing if it didn't have sensory input? If there's no that's like what I'm like. Wait, maybe I can time my question. What was your question again, Dr. Walligan?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I actually think we should move on because this is the stuff we're going to be able to come back to in the philosophy of mind and the epistemology section. So, I mean, this has been a good, like, kind of introductory conversation about it.
But
yeah.
Can I ask you just a quick question about that?
No worries.
Sure.
So I don't know, like, about the necessity for a like, if there's just if consciousness or if a perceived consciousness somehow is taken outside of this perception, like, being that I think we have, like, and is exposed to just like trueness, like cosmic truth, like in all forms, like wouldn't it cease to almost exist? Like, it doesn't enlightenment like sort of like destroy the self? Aren't you sort of like absorbed into like cosmic like?
I have no idea. I don't see why you would be, though.
Because
are you assuming? Okay. Are you assuming that an omnipotent being would lose all sense of consciousness? So, the transitive property, would God not have a personality or consciousness?
Yeah, I'd say that a true being that could perceive every single thing, know every single thing, would become almost like a rock. It's like a rock has
What's your reasoning?
Because what is perception but a body's interpretation of what is actually real, a disfigurement of reality.
Whoa, time out. This is a question. Why does that have to be the case? Like, granted, sometimes it is the case, but why does it have to be the case? Why can't you see the cup exactly as the cup is?
No, I'm not, like, I don't think that, like, I don't think you wouldn't see the cup if you perceived everything.
Right. So, like, okay. Well, there are two different things. So, right, there is this question about whether it's possible to perceive everything, right? Because that seems to involve an abandonment of a point of view. There seems to be a connection between a mind and a point of view, right?
Yeah.
That I agree with. But whether from a point of view what you can access has to be distorted, I'm not so clear on why that would be. But to the sense that you have a point of view of the world, I think I do understand what you're saying, and I'm inclined to agree.
I think that, but if I don't think that you could perceive one thing, like if you had an undistorted view, I don't think that you could perceive one thing as one thing, but you would have to perceive sort of everything, all of it at once.
All of like the little parts of it? Is that what you're trying to like?
Or just, well, like what? Yeah, just every, like, it would be everything.
How is this actually related to?
Yeah, I'm sorry, we got so off topic.
Well, it's related to what Dennett's doing because he's investigating the nature of the self, and so
I get like through perception and
right. Well, okay, guys. So Jacob, sorry, we derailed your presentation here.
Yeah, I know. I've got something. It's okay. I think we covered it. We covered enough.
Yeah. So there's Jacob's final slide. For all we know, we could be brains in a vat, and we're going to talk about that some more. That may be true. In my opinion, what Dennett is doing and this kind of responds to Zach's point that he doesn't always define his terms. It's because he thinks that our thinking about the self is kind of a mess, and he uses all these weird possibilities to show how our intuitions get pulled and twisted in all these different ways, and that we actually have no very clear concept here at all. And he's sort of playing with that fact, he thinks. So.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Yeah, quickly, Jacob.
But okay, I was just thinking about this like last night after I sent you my presentation, that we can still do like the same exercise, like where is the mind in relation to the body, because I don't like your mind. You always kind of assume is like up in your head, but like your body is still everywhere else. Is it there? Like
Your mind is on your legs.
Well, like could your mind be
Okay, guys. Okay, guys. Enjoy. I'll see you Wednesday. Here, download. I download the slides for today for what I'm asking you to respond to for the final reading analysis and questions. Okay.
All right, and I don't have to turn in a reading analysis because I'm doing this, right?
That's right.
All right, cool.
Cool.
Okay. All right, see you later.
See you guys
Bye.
Wednesday.